Greetings, my fellow fellow sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Saturday, April 14th, 2018. Yes, it's a little bit mild evening in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm kicking back along New River, where CJ's Java Lounge used to be. Disappointing on what happened. Things didn't work out. But sometimes you always gotta, hopefully they'll learn and better themselves and make it work. If they ever decide to open up business again, wish them the best. Yeah, so last night, President Trump talked about doing airstrikes on Syria and thanked Britain and France for being part of the coalition. Can we all sing God Bless the New Orders and bend over for the banksters? Absolutely. What gets me when some people think it's okay, I've been seeing stuff on Facebook saying, oh yeah, it's great, you did a good job in the airstrikes. I'm like, what the hell you guys are on? Dope? If you're tripping, man, let me know. Take you to your work. Take your land of Bizarro. I pledge allegiance to Bizarro. Do things backwards is logistic. Remind me of the Obamanoids when the Obama administration with Hillary Clinton decided to attack Libya with NATO and Al Qaeda. Double standards, I see. Well, I can tell you this, friends. It is totally, absolutely unconstitutional. Congress has the power to declare war. It's Clause 11 to be exact. I could be mistaken, but it's in there. But it's been going on for a long time. The War Powers Act and all this garbage where I could literally wipe my rear ends with does not supersede the supreme law of the land. Yes, I am being critical of President Trump on this particular action, and I have merit to back it up. Absolutely. So remember what I said in past episodes about President Trump, or soon to be President-elect Trump. President-elect Trump, excuse me. When I say if you're going to be critical, have merit, don't be a parrot. Don't go for the drama queen distracting agenda. This one here is on his face. That's why I'm critical of him, his staff. It's like, what have you been doing? Smelling Hillary Clinton's anal vapors for all I know? That's a good question, right? Very sarcastic, absolutely. But I do find this strike 100% unacceptable. I despise the Greater Israel Project. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-Semitic because Syrians are Semites as well. Just throw that in your heads if you gotta call me out with that baseless name call. And of course, Project for the New American Century, PNAC. Kio bono, who benefits? The military-industrial complex, the banksters, the one world order. So, can we see this thing go further? Hopefully it's not the case, but everyone around the world, including the United States, should be paying close attention. I don't care if you vote for President Donald Trump or not. It's not my forte. If you hear my past episodes, I'm glad that Hillary Clinton didn't win, but we still have to remain vigilant. And I've been pretty consistent at that. Principle over party. That's what Chris Ann Hall has to say. And I agree with her 100% because she says it's boldly illegal. That's right. Some people may laugh at the post, but I don't give a damn. It's not my fault if you're drinking the damn Kool-Aid or you're spreading your butt cheeks to your Lord and Savior. It doesn't work like that. He's just an example. Another patsy. That's right. Look at the clowns he has in the cabinet. John Bolton, please. And these other knuckleheads are in there. Come on. It's like I told people, it's like having John Bolton, let's dig up Zebra Brzezinski's grave and resurrect him like Frankenstein. This is what happens when you tangle foreign alliances. Get sticking their nose in other nations' affairs and being influenced by other nations or entities. George Washington made that in his farewell address, and John Jay's Federalist Papers 2 through 5. You can look that up. I have posted it in the past. So without further ado, I got this originally today from the Daily Bell, and the ones who actually published it was dailysheeple.com. It's entitled, "As War Drums Beat for Syria, Remember Lies and Propaganda Started Nearly Every War in U.S. History." It's by John Vibes. Yep. As it reads, war is the most primitive and senseless manifestations of the human experience. So naturally, more sane people with families, ambitions, and kind hearts want nothing to do with such things. Unfortunately, as we are seeing with the Syrian escalation, governments thrive on war as it gives them a pressing excuse to grab more power and take extrajudicial measures at both home and abroad. In the name of the war on terror, right? Precisely. To get around the obstacle of public opinion, governments have an extensive history of lying their way into war. This hard to believe for people who think that government has their best interest in mind, but it is something that rulers have been doing since the beginning of time. In modern United States, people are led to believe that the establishment accidentally flounders its way into war with good intentions of protecting the country from harm or liberating an ally in distress. The strategy of deception was illustrated by the Nazi propagandist Hermann Göring, who famously said, "Of course the people don't want war. Why should some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best he can get out of it is to come back to his farm in one piece?" Naturally, the common people don't want war neither in Russia nor in England nor, for that matter, in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leader of the country who will determine the policy. It is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of their leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them that they're being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. Right out of Edward Bernays' playbook propaganda, I would say, correct? I will continue on here. Of course, the Nazi regime is notorious for their brutality and deceit. So this admission is not as stunning as it would be from an American general. But make no mistake that these are the types of thoughts that American generals and politicians have. They are not just brazen enough to say it out loud. Believe it or not, using deceptive tactics to sway public opinion in favor of war is actually an official part of the U.S. military's playbook. According to WikiLeaks, the U.S. Army publication Special Forces, Foreign Internal Defense Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures for Special Forces recommends funding terrorists for regime change operations and using false flags to destabilize regimes that were unfriendly to Western interests. This is nothing new, though. This is part of American history, as nearly every war that the United States has ever been involved was built upon lies. Below are some of the most well-documented examples of war that were started because of lies and government propaganda. Spanish-American War, 1898. In January 1898, President William McKinley ordered the USS Maine to port in Havana, Cuba. Despite years of conflicts between Cuban rebels and the Spanish government, the move was intended to show a force against the Spanish government, in lines with the Monroe Doctrine to establish U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere. At 9:40 p.m. on February 15, 1898, the USS Maine exploded with a crew of 354 men on board, killing 266. While the Spanish government insisted the explosion was caused by a fire in the coal bunker that ignited the forward magazines, politicians in the U.S. were quick to blame Spain because they wanted an excuse to wage war on conquest for territory in Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. Although President McKinley had previously voiced his opposition to a military conflict on April 25th, the U.S. declared war on Spain. The 10-week war resulted in not only defeat of the last remnants of the Spanish Empire, but in the new era of U.S. expansionism, as the United States took control of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippine Islands. In 1976, a team of naval explosive experts examined the evidence and corroborated Spanish claim that the USS Maine sinking was caused by internal explosion from ammunition being stored on board. Interesting. So that makes a lot of sense, huh? False flag, a false attack. World War I, 1915, the First World War, was opposed by most Americans from the start, as they rightly saw it as a power struggle between European aristocrats that they had no business in. This was the problem for British military led by Winston Churchill, as they were desperate to get the United States behind them in the war. The U.S. did finally enter the war in 1915 when a U.S. ship called the Lusitania was sent through hostile waters at bait, filled with more than 1,000 civilians and an unusual large amount of ammunition. The ship was hit by a German torpedo and exploded instantly due to all of the ammunition on board, killing more than half the passengers and crew. A week before the sinking of Lusitania, Churchill wrote a letter to Walter Rusiman, the president of the Board of Trade, stating that it is most important to attract neutral shipping to our shores, and hope especially of embroiling the United States with Germany. After investigating the tragedy, former British Naval Intelligence Officer Patrick Beasley said, until fresh information comes to light, I am reluctantly driven to the conclusion that there was a conspiracy deliberately to put Lusitania at risk, and that hope that even an abortive attack on her would bring the United States into the war. Such a conspiracy could not have been put into effect without Winston Churchill's express permission and approval. In addition to this treacherous military maneuver, there was a relentless campaign in the U.S. to dehumanize Germans and to paint them as monsters. In some propaganda that was peddled to U.S. citizens, German soldiers were depicted killing babies and sometimes eating them. There were even false reports of crucifixions. World War II, 1941, the history book suggests that Pearl Harbor was an unprovoked attack, killing thousands of Americans and forcing the government to enter the war that was extremely unpopular at the time. However, the U.S. government was enacting strict sanctions on both Japan and Germany, hoping that either country would make the first move and give them an excuse to enter the war. Not only was the attack provoked, but President Roosevelt and the U.S. military knew the attack was coming and moved their most expensive aircraft to other locations while leaving thousands of people as sacrificial pawns. Yes, there's bumper stickers saying Pearl Harbor was an inside job, right? The history books also sell the war against the Nazis as a humanitarian war to save people from the Holocaust, but the U.S. denied safe passage to Jewish refugees, and UK intelligence even planned to blow up refugee ships in a plot called Operation Embarrass. Many American businesses and politicians worked very closely with the Nazis, even after the two countries were at war with each other. The Holocaust had already claimed the lives of millions of German people by that point, and a police state has been established. So whoever was doing business with the Nazis knew exactly who they were getting involved with. Prior to the Americans getting involved in the war, they were corners of political arena that were actually big supporter of the Nazi Party for both business purposes and common interests such as eugenics. The most prominent American politician to work with the Nazis was actually George W. Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush. There's no doubt that he was funding and working with the Nazis because his company's assets were seized in 1942 by the United States government under the Trading with the Enemy Act. He worked at the head of a financial firm called Brown Brothers Harriman, which was acted as a U.S. base for the Nazi business interests. Brown Brothers Harriman was one of the biggest international investment firms in the 1930s, and they sent millions of dollars in gold overseas to rebuild the German army and fund the Nazi Party. This racket was finally exposed on July 30th, 1942, when the New York Herald Tribune posted an article, Hitler's Angels had $3 million in the U.S. bank. This article raised suspicion about the bank being a secret nest for Nazi elites and eventually sparked the investigation that took down the operation. It's interesting because I know John Buchanan, who's an investigative reporter, talked about this as well, about the Nazi connection, Prescott Bush, Union Bank, and all that. And of course, David Icke had some of the stuff in here as well. So very interesting. And they see even Henry Ford was involved, and IBM as well, with the numbers tattooing the people in the camps. So I will continue on here. Korean War 1950. The propaganda war has led many to believe that the North Korean government launched an unprovoked attack on South Korea on behalf of the largest communist power of Russia and China. Yet once again, this was another case where the U.S. was propping up one dictator to fight another in an attempt to gain control of an entire continent, all the while lying to the people back home about the true motivations for war. As historian Mark E. Caprio, professor of history at Wakio University in Tokyo, points out, on February 8, 1949, the South Korean president met with Ambassador John Museo and Secretary of the Army Kenneth C. Royal in Seoul. Here, the Korean president listed the following as justification for initiating a war with the North. Southern Korean military could be easily increased by 100,000 if it drew from 150,000 to 200 Koreans who had recently fought with Japanese or the nationalist Chinese. Moreover, the morale of the Southern Korean military was greater than that of the North Koreans. If war broke out, he expected mass defections from the enemy. Finally, the United Nations recognition of South Korea legitimizes rules over the entire peninsula as stipulated in its constitution. Thus, he concluded there was nothing to be gained by waiting. Yeah, it's interesting there too, because like I said, and what happened was with that, they said 1/3 of the population during the Korean conflict was wiped out. They were wiped off the map. A third of the population. It was a lot of people. Because when they had that truce, they're just like left there, like beat them when they're down, just left them to rubble. All right. Vietnam 1964. Information released in 2005 by the National Security Agency show that the Gulf of Tonkin incident on August 1964 was deliberately falsified to make it appear that North Vietnamese gunboats attacked an American destroyer patrolling in international waters, when in reality, they did not. This was an event that the U.S. military used as an excuse to go to war in Vietnam. And it was surrounded by mystery and controversy until decades later when the official facts were released. It has now been 45 years since the U.S. withdrew the last of its combat troops from Vietnam, and the last prisoners of war that were held in North Vietnam returned to U.S. soil. According to estimates, more than 2 million civilians, 1.1 million Northern Vietnamese and Viet Cong fighters, 250,000 South Vietnamese fighters, and nearly 58,000 U.S. military members were killed in Vietnam during the war, all because of lies that were used to create propaganda that made Americans fear for their safety. That's been, they've been having conflict 1,000 years before that. So, tell me, Libya, 1984, then 2015. Former Mossad agent Viktor Ostrovsky admitted that the Mossad planted a radio transmitter in Libyan Prime Minister Muammar Gaddafi's compound in Tripoli, which broadcast fake terrorist transmissions that were recorded by Mossad and used to frame Gaddafi as a terrorist supporter. President Reagan bombed Libya immediately after the false reports, but this was not the first or last time the U.S. would involve itself in Libya. As the Free Thought Project has reported, 3,000 emails from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton released by the State Department contain damning evidence of Western nations using NATO as a tool to overthrow Gaddafi. The NATO overthrow overthrow was not for the protection of the people, but instead it was to thwart Gaddafi's attempts to create a gold-backed African currency to compete with the Western central banking monopoly. As per usual, the U.S. and its Western counterparts left the country to its own devices after slashing the once thriving nation to the ground. Today, there is no government of Libya. It's simply mobs that patrol the streets and kill one another. Virginia State Senator Richard Black told RT of the mess left behind. One moment here. Sorry about that. Despite certain issues in Libya before the coup, Libyans had an incredible high standard of living, highest in Africa. International lawyer Francis Boyle told RT, when I first went to Libya in 1986, I was amazed by the empowerment of women. What I saw in Libya was that women could do anything they wanted to do. There's a lot of things about that. They say Muammar Gaddafi, who wasn't a chauvinist, and he was more, he was a Muslim by faith, but Sharia law was considered illegal in Libya. Something to think about. But the United States supports Saudi Arabia. Wahhabism, exceptional, right? How special. People still get pissed off when I make comments about President Trump laying with the Saudi prince, right? Ha ha. Don't get too offended. Iraq, 1990. At the onset of the Operation Desert Storm in 1990, a public relations firm by the name of The Hill and No Wanton spent millions of dollars on the U.S. government's behalf constructing new pieces that would sell the war to the American public. One of the most moving hoaxes to come from this push to war was testimony from a 15-year-old Kuwaiti girl known only by her first name, Naira. In a videotaped testimony that was later distributed to the media, she claimed that Iraqi soldiers killed babies in incubators at a hospital. I volunteered at the Al Aden hospital. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns, go into the room where babies were in the incubators, Naira said. They took the babies out of the incubators, took the incubators, left the babies on the cold floor to die. And she was like crying in tears. I've seen that video too. Sounds horrible, right? Well, luckily it never happened. This was a fabricated event designed to dehumanize the Iraqi people in the eyes of the American public. The whole thing was exposed when journalists discovered that the witnesses, Naira was actually the daughter of a U.S. ambassador who was being coached by military psychological operations specialists. In addition to his false testimony, the U.S. government also shown Saudi Arabia fake satellite images that depicted Iraqi troops massing on their border. Interesting, right? Yeah. CNN was involved in that as well. Iraq 2003 and present. Emails that were declassified in 2015 paint much different picture of the Bush administration's invasion of Iraq than they led to the public to believe. A memo drafted by the U.S. Embassy in London revealed how the Bush administration used spies in the British Labour Party to help shape British public opinion in favor of the war prior to U.S. invasion. In the weeks leading up to the invasion of Iraq, Bush administration insinuated American airways with assertions ranging from Saddam Hussein's connection to al-Qaeda to Colin Powell's badly flawed claims that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. After the invasion of foreign sovereign nation, President W. Bush blatantly lied to the American public when news came to light that there was, in fact, the weapons of mass destruction. He simply accused anyone who criticized him attempting to reverse history. Yeah, that's what happens when you spread your buck cheeks to the New World Order, right? Ha ha, Jorge Bush. During his presidency, while giving a speech about that very issue, Bush said the nation acted to a threat from the dictator of Iraq. Now, there are some who would like to rewrite history. Revisionist historians is what I like to call them. And that little hypocrite has an IQ of a turnip. War on Terror, 2001 to present. Now the United States military and its allies are exporting their wars of terror across the globe in the name of fighting terrorism, and most of these wars are also justified with propaganda and lies. In the early days of the War on Terror, the Macedonian government was caught staging a fake terror attack in an attempt to get funding from Western forces. 6 innocent Pakistani immigrants were accused of being terrorists and killed in the incident. In 2001, U.S. media spent weeks circulating the idea that the anthrax attacks were being carried out by Arabs connected with Afghanistan, when in reality it was the government scientists behind the attacks. In 2005, former Department of Justice lawyer John Yoo suggested that the U.S. should create a false terrorist organization to give the military and accused to the attack places where they believe the terrorists might be hiding. I'm going to stop there for a moment because it's interesting. I have a friend of mine had a discussion. Her had a best friend. They tried to blame him for the anthrax attacks, scapegoat him, and he took his own life. So that's how these sons of bitches think, even in our own government. I believe that doctor had nothing to do with it at all. I will continue on here. Our agencies create a false terrorist organization, you said. It could be from have its own websites, recruitment centers, training camps, and fundraising operations. It could launch fake terrorist operations and claim credit for real terrorist strikes, helping to sow confusion with Al-Qaeda ranks, causing operatives to doubt others' identities and to question the validity of communications. In 2005, Israeli soldiers admitted to throwing stones at other Israeli soldiers, but they could blame it on Palestinians to justify using violent force against protesters. Israel also has a deep history of using lies and false attacks to justify military action. How nice that is, right? Yeah. Israel in Hebrew means struggling with God. I will continue on here. An incident came to known as the Levant Affair in 1954. Undercover Israeli agents set off bombs against U.S. and British targets, hoping that the attacks would be blamed on local rebels. Luckily, they were caught and the plot was exposed. This long track record of deception is important to consider as the U.S. military is beaten the war drum again, this time in Syria, where there has also been a long list of false attacks at the hands of Western powers. Starting all the way back in 1957, politicians in the U.S. and the U.K. developed a plot to train Islamic extremists to carry out false flag attacks and push for regime change in Syria. Now, decades later, history is repeating itself in the same part of the world as regime change in Syria is back on the agenda and the Western powers are following the same playbook. I know, I'm still scratching my head, friends, okay? It's also known that rebel groups who would eventually become ISIS were funded by U.S. forces in the present-day Syrian civil war. Also, previous gas attacks that were blamed on Assad were never proven to be connected with his government. In fact, the official story of these attacks is highly contested. Theodore Polsto, a professor emeritus at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, made a statement after the alleged gas attack last year saying that he does not believe the Assad regime was responsible for the attacks and that it is possible for the evidence was tampered with. Pulitzer's Prize-winning investigative reporter Seymour Hersh said high-level American sources told him that the Turkish government carried out the chemical weapons attacks blamed on the Syrian government. Soon after, Turkish government officials were recorded discussing plans to carry out similar attacks and blame it on the Assad regime. The TFTP, which is the Free Thought Project, pointed out in an article yesterday regardless of who is actually responsible for the attack. An intervention in the U.S. military will just lead to more death and destruction. Given that the U.S. government has such a reputation for mass murder and human rights violations, we should always be extremely suspicious whenever anyone in power claims to be doing something noble, especially when military force is involved. To learn more, check out The Shadow Ring, hard-hitting documentary about the war of propaganda. It came out in 2015, fully documented. Maybe check it out on YouTube or go to freedocumentaries.com, one of those sites, and check it out. And John Vives, man, he is a real good author on this. He's a researcher, including the Free Your Mind conference. He was involved with that. But the whole thing is, my friends, You always got to look at things in the bigger picture. And even told people that Ron Paul was a nut job with a tinfoil hat. But you know what? He's damn right when it comes to foreign entanglements. So was George Washington also. And all these little dip craps, I don't care what side of the paradigm you're on, you guys are lost puppies, herd-conformed hacks, walking antimatter. However, there's people who are Trump supporters are highly ticked off about this as well. So I'm not going to knock them off, the whole group in its entirety. Same thing with the Obama supporters. They were real critical of him going after when he after Libya. Okay, so just give you guys an example. This is why I always tell people, you got to be vigilant. You never trust the government, period. And never look at individuals who are running for office as their Lord and Savior. It's been going on for at least good amount of time. They're looking for a president as a king, elect a king, or a Lord, or a Savior to free us all from tyranny. It doesn't work like that. And I know I may be digressing, but forgive me. It's the damn principle. What people have lost touch on. Not all, but a great amount. That is unacceptable. If you believe in hero worship, including bowing down to your president, then you're a lost cause and destroyed your heritage. You have the natural born right to criticize and keep these people on their toes. Nothing you could do about it. You never, ever say that. Then you're telling me you're dumb, stagnant, and happy. I don't see it that way. People like that probably need a good bar of Palmolive soap. Call them Palmolivist. And you know what? That is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share it throughout social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or send me something that's interesting you may want to check out. Whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. Keep me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Gab, GAB.ai, and Patreon.com/LookYourLuck3, which are 3 eyes, represents the 3. If you're going to be a donor, that would be awesome. I will be happy. But I will keep on going. In addition, you can email me at LookYourLuck3@gmail.com, or to the encrypted ones, have a Proton Mail account, LookYourLuck03@protonmail.com. Okay, my friends, that is all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Put your thoughts and prayers to all the folks in that region and to all around the world. Defy all forms of tyranny in all 7 continents. That including what's going on with the farmers in South Africa, totally unacceptable. And then we'll have with their Ribagi monks. Okay, that happened in Myanmar. Unacceptable. Pay attention. That's all I have to say. Sports is great. It's fine. But everyone needs to look at the bigger picture, because what's going to happen, it can haunt all of us when we least expect it. So stay vigilant. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. May your guardian spirits be with you.